Hello and welcome to my channel, The Curious Coder. This video is part of my Spring Security series, and in this video, I'm going to discuss about how authorization takes place in Spring Security. Imagine you're building a hotel management application and it has multiple functionalities. You can add a room, you could view some room, or you could view all the rooms. Now let's say we have three types of users: admin, staff, and a guest user. The admin should be able to access all the functionalities, add rooms, view any room, and view all the rooms. The staff should only be able to view rooms but should not be allowed to add a room. And the guest should have the most restricted access. They should only be able to view their own room. Now here's the important part. All these users are already logged in, which means they are authenticated. But even after authentication, they don't have the full access to everything. This is what authorization is. In Spring Security, we implement authorization using roles and permissions, deciding who can access what. So let's learn how to implement it. Now, role is something that is associated with a user. A user could be some guest user or an admin or some staff member. So somehow I need to associate this role with the user. Okay, so let's start with that. What I'll do is I'll just add a string field named role. Okay, and we can map it to some column. Let's say name is equal to role. Alright, so I'm making the changes in the user entity. I have added another field role. Okay, and I've mapped it to this DB column. Alright, and let me just add it as a constructor parameter in this constructor. Not in this one. This is a no argument constructor. I will add this role in the all argument constructor. Alright. Similarly, I can also create some getter and setter methods for it. Okay. So we have a get role and set role. Alright. So similarly, in the database also, I have these columns: ID, username, password, and is active. So what I'll do is I'll simply just add another column using this alter table command. I will add this column role. Okay, and let me just delete the existing users. Alright, so now we have this users table. This is empty, and we have added another column role here. Okay, now we have this class user service in which we are fetching the data from the database. Alright, also one more thing. This is some code that I have written already for JWT in my previous video, and my recommendation is that you must watch that video, then only come here and watch this, because it is kind of a continuation of it. We have already implemented the JWT part and it is very, very important. Okay, only after that you'll be able to understand how roles work. Okay, cool. So here in this user service, we fetch the user from the database, and this implements this user detail service, which is actually a Spring framework, a Spring Security class. Okay, this is an interface that Spring Security provides us. So we have implemented this method load user by username, and in this method we fetch the user from the database, and using this user we build this user details object. Okay, so the crux is that we fetch the user from the database and we basically tell all the user information to Spring Security. Okay, somehow we have transferred that information from the database to Spring Security. Okay, so we have already transferred this username, password. We also have to give information about the roles. Okay, so the roles we set in this field authorities. Okay, so as we are talking about authorization, so roles are set in this authorities. Okay, so as of now we have it as an empty list. Instead of this, I will just use this object new simple granted authority, and here using this user I will just pass the role. Okay, simple. So at this point you can understand that now Spring Security has information about the user role. Okay, along with the username and password, we have also given the information about the role. Okay, now what? Now, as I told you that JWT is a token that consists all the user data inside it. Okay, So when we were creating the JWT token, here in the generate token, we have set the username, we set the signature, we set some expiry time. So at this point only, we should also set the information about the user role. Okay, so how can I do that? Here in the claims, we have set a new hash map. Instead of that, I will just create another hash map, string comma object. Let's call it claims only. Claims is equal to new hash map. And in this map, I can put a key as role. Okay, like this. And against it, I can add a role. So where can I get this role from? I'll take another argument here, string role, and I will just add it. Okay, and instead of the hash map, new hash map, I will just put claims over here. Okay, so at the time of token generation, I'm adding the role. All right, now where do I get this role? Okay, that is the important thing. So we call this method from the user controller, and at the time of authentication, after the user is authenticated, basically at the first time we make a DB call and we validate our credentials. So at that time, if it is a valid user, if it is authenticated, then we used to generate the token, right? So when we are doing this authentication, inside internally we are actually making a DB call, and this authentication is actually a class from Spring Security only. Okay, so as I told you that here in the user service, we have already passed the role information, the authorities inside this user details object. So Spring Security already knows about the roles. Okay, so somehow I can fetch those roles from this authenticate object as well, from this authentication object. Okay, so let me show you how we can do that. We can simply use authenticate.getAuthorities. Okay, first I'll get all the authorities, then I will iterate over them. As of now, we only have one authority only. Okay, dot next dot authority, again dot get authority. Okay, and here we'll get the roles. All right, now one thing is that you should remember that whenever we are creating these roles, we should use a prefix role underscore. Okay, and that we use whenever we want to inform Spring Security about that role. Okay, so that is a prefix which is very important, and I'll show you where exactly it is used. So for now, we should know that this authority, this role has a prefix. Okay, but when I'm passing that role to the JWT token, at that time, I don't want the prefix. Okay, so I'll just show you. For now, I will replace that prefix role underscore. Okay, I'm going to add this at some place, you'll see. But as of now, I'll just replace it with some empty string. Okay, so when we'll fetch the role from this authority, we'll get a role along with this prefix. But now I want to pass this role in the token. So that is why I am removing this prefix. Okay, that is what you need to understand. Okay, so this will return me a string role. Okay, so this is how we can fetch a role from this authentication object. All right, which is basically an interface that is a part of Spring Security. Okay, and I will just simply pass this role. Great. Okay, so at the time of token generation, we have passed the role from the database that we got from the database. From the database, we passed it to Spring Security, and from this authentication object, we passed it in the generate token method. Okay, here we have put it in some map, and this map we have added in the claims. All right, now do we need to verify this? Do we need any part of roles at the time of token validation as well? So actually, yes, I will show you a place. Okay, so at this place, we created a JWT filter, if you remember, and we extracted these claims. So here we have to pass this to the security context holder. Okay, we pass this token, and you can see that we created this username password authentication token. And here we are passing the username, then credentials at null. And we had this third argument where we said that it will be a empty list. Okay, but actually it was the authorities only. Okay, so here as well, we need to pass the roles. So how will I get that? We have the claims. Using the claim, I can just simply get role. Okay, simple, and this will be of type string. Okay, that's it. If I extract a variable, this will be string role. Okay, so from the claims I got the role, and I need to pass this role over here. Okay, so this will actually not be a string value. Instead I will need list dot of new simple granted authority, and here I will pass the role. Okay, this will be a list. I'll extract. All right, and this simple granted authorities I will pass over here. Okay, here in this token, which I actually set to the security context. All right, so all this I have told in my previous video. I hope you remember. Okay, great. So far what we have done, we have added a role in this user entity. We added a column in the database. Okay, after that we added that when we were generating the token. Okay, so at this point in the user controller, when we were generating the token, we fetched it from the authentication object and we passed it here in the generate token, where we added it as claims. And also at the time of verification of that token, we are passing it to the security context in this username password authentication token object. Okay, and here we are fetching from the claims. Okay, simple. Now one thing I missed actually here as well, I will have to add the prefix. Okay, so from there I removed where I was supposed to add the role in the token. So in the token I removed it, I removed the prefix, but whenever I'm passing the role information to Spring Security, at that time I always add this prefix. Okay, so that is why I've added role plus this role, because this will get from the claims and claims we get from the token, and in the token we don't have that prefix. Okay, so once I'll actually hit the API, you'll get to understand about this prefix. For now, if you're not totally getting it, it's fine. Okay, I'll show you that. All right, cool. So now we have configured the roles at every place, but as of now, we have not set this that which role can access which API. Okay, that we have not configured. So let me just create some APIs. I'll just create a controller, room controller. Okay, @risk controller. This will be @request mapping /rooms. I'll create 3 APIs. Let's say the first one is add room. Okay, so this will be a simple post mapping, and I'll say okay, let it be /rooms only. All right, so I'll just simply return room added. Okay, then I have another API, public string get room by ID. Okay, so this one I can just, for this I can use a get mapping, and here I will pass ID as a path variable. Okay, @path variable, let's say long ID, and I will just simply return a string value that room fetched for ID. Okay, like this. And we can have a third API that fetches all the rooms. Okay, so get rooms, this will be the third API, and I will just map it with @get mapping. Okay, so this one is mapped with /rooms, and this post mapping is also mapped with /rooms, but this one is a post method and this one is a get method. Okay, so I will just simply return, let's say all rooms. Okay, so obviously in an actual hotel management application, there will be DB operations here, and these APIs will be performing some tasks instead of just returning some string values. But here, just for the clarity, I have written it like this. Okay, so now what I want to achieve is that if a user is admin, then I want them to access all these 3 APIs. If a user is just a staff member, then I want them to access these 2 APIs. Okay, the get all rooms and get room by ID. But that staff member won't be able to add a room. Okay, and if user is just a guest, then I don't want that user to get all the rooms, and I also don't want that user to add a room. That user can only access this API. Okay, this is what I want. So now how can I configure this? For that, I need to reach the security config. So actually, you can see that here we have already configured something. We have used this request matchers to bypass this user API. Okay, all the APIs in this user controller, we have bypassed it from any kind of security because we have given them all the permissions. Okay, so we'll use a similar kind of thing. What I'll do is I'll just write request matchers. Let's say http method dot post, and the request is /rooms. Okay, so this is my request, this one, this API. So for this API, what I want is I only want it to be accessed by the admin. Okay, so here I will write admin like this. So I told you about that prefix. This is where that prefix comes in handy. Okay, if we want this has role method to work perfectly, we have to create the role with that prefix role underscore, because then only this method will understand that okay, this admin has this admin is a role. Okay, so it only reads the part which is after that prefix. If I have not given that role underscore, then this method will fail. Okay, so actually that is kind of a convention. You should understand that Spring Security always considers a role with a prefix. So since we have added it as a prefix there, here we only have to add the name. Okay, so here I can write admin because it already considers it as a role because we have added that prefix. Okay, so this is how the convention is. Now I can configure other APIs as well. So this one is .get and this is /rooms. Alright, so now this API is this one. In the room controller, this get rooms. Okay, so this I want to be accessed by admin as well as the staff member. Alright, so here I used has role. Here I will use has any role because we are configuring multiple roles. So admin can access this and user and the staff can also access it. Okay, so these are some of the roles that I am configuring. Similarly, we have the third API, which is http method dot get. Okay, and this is, let's say /rooms /star. All right, and this third API, this one, I want to be accessed by all the three roles. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just simply add has any role. Here I'll say admin, then staff, and also the guest. Okay, so this third API /room /star, basically anything after the rooms that can be accessed by all the three roles. Okay, so now let me run my application. Okay, it started perfectly on 8080. What I'll do is first I'm gonna register some user. Okay, so this username is let's say the username is curious coder and the password is 12345. Okay, we missed one thing, I guess, that when we are adding the user, okay, we are setting the user, we have to set the role as well. Okay, I've already done it, I didn't show you that, but here in this save user where we are going to generate the user, instead of username and password, as a request parameter we should also take a role and we should set that role in the DB. Okay, when we are registering a user. Okay, so that is what I've done. So here I will just pass a role. Let the role be role underscore. Here we will have to give the prefix. Okay, so let the user be role underscore admin for now. Let it be the curious coder. Okay, and the password be 12345. If I hit my API, it works perfectly. In the database, if I check it, we have made the entry and the role is role underscore admin. Okay, cool. Now what I'll do is I'll generate a JWT token for this username and password. So I'll hit this authenticate API. Okay, we have this JWT token. All right, now let me just add the APIs of rooms. Okay, so we have this post API /rooms. So if I try to hit it, Of course, I won't be able to hit it. Why? Because I have not added the JWT token yet. Okay, so in the authorization, I will have to give this bearer token, and here I will just copy paste the token. Okay, I copied this token and I pasted it here. Alright, let me just save this request. Let's say add room. Alright, now if I hit this API, it works perfectly. Okay, it says room added. Alright, now if I change this API, let's say get all the rooms, this will also work. And if I want to fetch a particular room with some ID, this one also works. Okay, why? Because the user that I created has the role as admin. Okay, now let me create another user, the curious coder 2, and this time let the role be simply staff. Okay, role underscore staff. Now if I hit it, great, it gives 200. Okay, if I check the user table, I have one more entry and the role is staff. Okay, now if I try to hit this API, okay, so if we hit this get API, okay, first I have to generate a token for this particular user. This is the curious coder 2. I will just generate a different token and copy it. Okay, and let me just paste it. Yeah, so if I try to access this API /room/1, I'm able to access it. If I try to fetch all the rooms, that also I'm able to access. But if I try to add a room, now it gives 403 forbidden. Okay, why? Because we have configured that this API, this post API /rooms can only be accessed by an admin, not by a staff member. But these other two APIs, the get API of rooms and get a room by ID, these can be accessed by staff as well. Alright, similarly, let me create another user. Let this be the curious coder 3, and I'll just keep it as role underscore guest. Okay, I'm keeping the password same only for every user. Alright, so I made the third entry. If we check, we have this entry and the role is role underscore guest. Now if I generate a token for this one, the curious coder 3, we get a different token. This I can copy. If I try to access this API, I'll just copy paste this. This is the post API to add a room. This will be 403 forbidden. If I want to fetch all the rooms, this is also 403 forbidden. But if I want to fetch only particular room which might be assigned to me, okay, that I can access. Alright, so this is how I have configured different roles and I have given them access to different APIs. Okay, now instead of has role, there is one more method that you might see in some implementations. What they do is they just write has authority. The only difference is that here you will have to give the prefix. You will have to write it like this. Similarly, here I will write has any authority, and again you will have to give the prefix role underscore. Similarly, role underscore. Here as well, role underscore. So these are some conventions that you just have to learn. Okay, that's why I'm emphasizing a lot on it. Okay, because sometimes when you see the implementation, you might get confused. Okay, so here also I'll use has any authority. Alright, so either you can directly call the has role method or you can call has authority, but here you will have to use a prefix. Okay, so I'll just rerun. Alright, so we already have the users. I'll just simply generate a token again. Let's say I generate for the curious coder 3. Alright, I have this token. Now if I try to fetch this room, only a room by an ID, I'm able to access it. Okay, but if I try to fetch all the rooms, I cannot. Similarly, if I try to create a room, that also I can't do, because the token that I've used is for the curious coder 3, whose role is role underscore guest. Alright, now one more thing that I wanted to show you. These are some of the APIs that I created earlier. Okay, so I'll show you in the controller as well. These are simply hello, hey and hi, and I have not configured anything in the security config about them. Okay, we don't have any request matchers for these APIs. So if I try to access them, let's say I will just copy paste the JWT token that I just got, and if I try to access them, I can easily access them. Okay, this one also I'll show you this. You'll use bearer token, and I can access hey world as well. Similarly, I can also access hello. Why? Because we don't have any role based authentication on it. Okay, we have just simply used JWT in our project, and I'm passing the JWT. That is why I'm able to access them. Now, before going any further in the video, let me tell you about a few classes and interfaces that actually work behind the scene. Okay, so in the interviews, sometimes they ask questions around these as well. So that's why I wanted to give you a glimpse. Okay, so when we were talking about authentication, there was an interface authentication manager that was working behind the scene, right? Similarly, for authorization, there is an interface authorization manager. All right, so it is a functional interface and it has this method authorize that is to be implemented. So if you look carefully, this interface has a lot of implementations, and one of the implementation is this one, request matcher delegating authorization manager. Okay, so when I am actually calling this request matchers, internally this interface, this class comes into picture. Okay, so this is one of the implementation which is used when we are giving our configuration using the request matchers. All right. Similarly, there are a few more implementations. I'll discuss about these two as well, the pre-authorize and the post-authorize. Okay, so in this security config, we are configuring each API one by one. Okay, but in an actual application, there will be a lot of controllers and there will be a lot of APIs. So if I'm going to configure them like this in this security config, then it will be actually very tedious and this class will become a very large file. Okay, so that is why there is another way to configure our methods, and that is actually called method security. All right, so what we can do is, instead of writing it like this, I will just comment this out. We can just go on the controller level, and on this method I can use an annotation that says @pre-authorize. Okay, and here I can simply say has role and I can just pass admin. Okay, simple. Similarly, here I will pass admin as well as staff as well as guest. I guess this API is allowed by every user, every role. Okay, guest, and in this one I will just say admin and staff. All right, so this is how I can configure my roles on the method level. Okay, and when we are using this annotation, at that point internally this request matcher is not used. Instead, this pre-authorize authorization manager is used. Okay, so this is something that you can tell in an interview. Okay, so all right, now I was in this controller, in the room controller, and if I run my application, great, so the project started. I'll simply generate the token for the curious coder. So this one is the one that has the role as admin. Okay, so the curious coder has admin, coder 2 has staff, and coder 3 has guest. All right, so if I copy paste this token and let's paste it here. All right, so this is the ID one. I can, okay, it is giving forbidden. Why? Let me just check. This says has role. Okay, I have to write actually has any role here, and here as well has any role. Okay, and here we are giving a single role, so I'll write has role. Okay, I'll just rerun. Great, so I'll again generate the token. I'll just copy it and I can paste it here. All right, great, so now I'm able to access the API. Similarly, I can also access the post API and I can also access the fetch all rooms. Okay, because my user is an admin. Now I'll generate token for the curious coder 2. This one is staff member. copy it, paste it here, and this time if I try to access the post API, it will give me forbidden, but I can access the get all API, and similarly I can also access this one. Okay, and similarly if I do it for the curious coder 3, I can just copy it, paste it in the token. Okay, so it can access this API but cannot access the post rooms as well as the get rooms. Alright, simple. So this is how it works. Now we have a pre-authorize. Similarly, we also have something called post-authorize. Okay, so what does post-authorize does? So actually what does pre-authorize does? Before hitting this method, this method gets called, this authentication takes place. Okay, because as the name suggests, it's pre-authorize. But in case of a post-authorize, the method gets hit, but even after that we can add some authorization. Okay, so even after the method is hit, we can have some validations based on the data that we are returning. Okay, so let me show you. What I'll do is I'll just simply create a class. Let's say a room. It has a field private long ID, and let's say there is another field assigned to. Alright, I will add some getter, setter and constructor as well. These are the getter, setter, and let me also add a constructor, generate a constructor for both the fields. Alright, so in this room controller, let's say this API, instead of a string, it returns a room object. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm simply returning a room, passing the ID, and let's say I say that the room is assigned to curious coder. Okay, this is the user whom I have assigned the room. Now I have not yet authenticated it. I have not yet authorized it to say that okay, this is assigned to the curious coder, because here I am saying that it could be any role. It could be admin, staff or guest. But let's say based on this return type, based on the data that I am returning, I want to add some authorization. So that I can do using a post authorize. I just simply have to write @post authorize return object. Here I will have to write it like this: return object, this represents this object, dot this field assigned to. Okay, I can just call it assigned to. Alright, this is just one example, and I am saying that this should be equal to authentication dot name. Okay, so authentication object we already have somewhere in Spring Security, and I'm saying that this assigned to should be equal to authentication dot name. So whichever user is logged in at this point of time, whichever user is actually hitting this API, that user's name should be equal to the name which is here in the assigned to. Okay, so I'll just rerun and show you. Alright, so I will generate a token first for the curious coder, and let me not generate for the let's generate for the curious coder. So this one is admin. Okay, and as we know, admin has the access. Actually every role has the access here. Okay, and I will just simply call this method add room, not add room per se, this room /1. Okay, so when I hit it, I'm able to access it. Okay, but if I change it to the curious coder 2, and now if I generate the token, alright, now it says 403 forbidden. Okay, why? Because even though the role was allowed, even though staff was allowed, but the name, the authentication name, the username was actually the curious coder 2. Alright, it was the curious coder 2. So it didn't match the return object dot assigned to. The assigned to value is the curious coder. Alright, so these kind of validations we can add using @post authorize. Basically it works on the returning data. So if you want any kind of validation on the returning data, you can use post authorize. Alright, and in this case the interface that is used, basically the class that is used, is this one, this post authorize authorization manager. Okay. Now so far we have seen how we can implement the authorization using roles. Now let's see how we can do the same using permissions. Okay. So before we start with permissions, let me make a small change. Instead of this string roles, okay, instead of this string role, I will just create an enum for the role. Alright, so we can just create an enum like this role, and here I will add all the three roles that I have configured. Okay, so role underscore admin, role underscore staff, and role underscore guest. Alright, so this will be actually very handy when we'll talk about permissions. Okay, so that's why I'm making this change. So instead of this role instead of the string in the user entity, I'll just change it to role. Okay, and I will have to add this annotation at the rate enumerated enum type dot string. So this means that in the DB we have to save it as a string. Alright, okay, now instead of string, here I will change it to role. Similarly, I'll change the getter and setters role, and this will also be of the type role. Okay, now we are using these things at couple of places. So in this user service, we are using this user.getRole. So I just have to write dot name. Okay, so this name will give me the string value of that role. Alright, similarly, I think it is used someplace else as well. I think in the filter. Yeah, so here I was creating this simple granted authority, this role that we are passing in the security context. So here also I'll just do role.name. Alright, I think it is just a simple string role here as of now. Okay, so we don't have to make this change. Alright, so now in the JWT token as well, where I'm generating the token, here I will not change it to enum. I'll keep it same only. I'll keep it as a string key value pair. Alright, now what exactly is a permission? So let me just create another enum and explain it to you using that enum only. So I can just create an enum for permission, and I can add values like read underscore or room underscore add, room underscore view, and room underscore view all. Okay, something like that. Alright, so when we are talking about roles, we are saying that a user is assigned to some role. Okay, so roles are kind of different types of users, and permission is something that those users are permitted to do. Okay, so our roles were guest and admin, or it could be a staff. Okay, but what operations that they can perform, that we define in the permission. Okay, so whether they can add a room, or they can view a room, or they could view all the rooms, these kind of things are defined in permissions. Okay, so somehow I will have to map these permissions with these roles. So how can I do that? I will just take a field, let's say private final. I'll take a set of permissions and call it permissions. Okay, all right, and let me just create a constructor, and I will also create us a getter method, okay, for this permissions. All right, so here I will just pass all the permissions. It will be set.off, so the permission dot room add. Okay, so admin will have all the permissions. All right, then this will be permission dot room view, comma, permission dot room view all. Okay, let me just do it like this. Okay, so I have mapped this role with all these three permissions. All right, similarly here also I can add a couple of permissions. So this is a staff member, so I will give it a permission to view the room and to view all the rooms. Okay, but it will not have the permission to add the room. All right, similarly this guest will only have one permission, that is permission to view only a single room. Alright, so this is how we can map a role with some permissions. And what exactly is changed in this, I'll tell you. In the controller, in this controller, instead of giving this authorization on the basis of role, what I'll do is I'll just comment this out and I'll change it to permission. Okay, so I'm saying that this add room, this API can only be accessed by anyone who has the permission as add room. Okay, so I'm saying the permissions are also stored in authority. So I will just add, let me just check, the name was room underscore add. Okay, so here I will pass room underscore add. Alright, and permission does not have any prefix. Okay, we can just directly write the name. Alright, similarly, I'll remove this get room by ID. It should be accessed by anyone who has this permission, has authority. Let me just copy paste this, and this will be room underscore view. Okay, similarly, I'll remove this and this will be room underscore view underscore all. Alright, so we are kind of doing the same thing. It's actually exactly the same thing, but the approach is a bit different. What we are doing here is that we have mapped these APIs with the permission. Okay, so we are authorizing them on the basis of permission, and that actually makes kind of more sense. Okay, we are saying that anyone can access this API add room, anyone who has the permission to add the room. Okay, and anyone who has the permission to view this room can actually access this API. Similarly, anyone who has the permission to view all the rooms can access this get rooms API. Okay, and at the user level, we are mapping that user with a role. We are not mapping user directly with the permission. We are mapping user with this role only, and this role is further mapped with permission. So we are saying that admin has all these three permission, staff has these two permission, and guest has the permission to view the room. Alright, so it is kind of decoupled now, and there is one more thing that I have to do. I'm using has authority. So we have added the roles in authorities. Similarly, we also have to add the permissions in the authorities. Okay, so that I will do. So one place is this, in the user service, you can see that we have added the role. So in the same way, we will actually have to add the permissions as well. So how can I do that? I'll just create a list of authorities like this, is equal to new array list. Alright, let me just import. First, let me add the role. I'm also keeping role as well, so that if you want to give a role based authentication, that also you can do, but we'll also add the permissions. Okay, so this I will add here. Alright, so first I've added the role in this list. Now how can I get permissions? Very simple, we can get it using the role only. Okay, so here we get the set of permissions. I'll just loop on it. For every permission, what I'll do, I will just add it in the authorities. So authorities.add new simple granted authority, and here I will add the permission. Okay, permission.name, because that is also an enum. Alright, simple. So now this list of authorities has both roles as well as permissions. Okay, so here in this authorities, in the user details object, basically, I will just add authorities. Great. And there is one more change here in this JWT filter as well. We were adding the role in this token, this username password authentication token. So here also we were adding these authorities. So I will just fetch. Okay, so I have this role. First, let me convert it into an enum, role.value of role. Okay, so instead of taking role, I'll just directly take it like this. Let me copy and paste. Alright, I'll remove this role. Great. So now I have a role of I have this role of type this enum. Okay, and using this I can again fetch. First, let me just show you here. In this list, I have added the role, and this role is of string type. So actually I will have to add role prefix here. I'll show you why. Basically, when we are doing this claims.get, at this point of time we are fetching from the JWT token. Okay, so from the JWT token we will only get the suffix part, we will get admin. Okay, so then I have to add role underscore, we have to add that thing, and then only it will be converted into the actual enum, because in the enum we already have the prefix. Okay, then only it will be mapped with the enum. Okay, so here now we have the role, and now again I don't need to add it, I can just simply say role.name. Okay, simple, because now this enum already has the prefix. Okay, enum already contains the prefix. All right, so in this list of authorities I have added the role. Similarly, I will also have to add the permissions. Okay, so how can I do that? I will just again fetch the permissions from this enum, and I will loop on it. For every permission I simply have to just add it in the list. Okay, dot add permission dot name. Okay, simple. All right, so this is, yeah, my bad, it will be of type new simple granted authority. Okay, this is of the type simple granted authority. We'll create an object, and in this object we'll add the permission. Okay, great. Yeah, so this is wrapped with some array list. All right, cool. So what I have done is I have added the role as well as I have added the permissions, and here we are just passing this list simple granted authorities. Okay, that's it, it's simple. Now what I can do, I have registered the roles and permissions. I have changed my authorization in the room controller. Okay, this has been changed to has authority, and we have just configured it using the permissions. Now I will just simply okay, one thing I think I have to make the change. In the user entity I have added it as a role. So in the user controller also, yeah, here I will face this issue because I have taken it as a string, but instead I will have to take it as a role. Okay, like this. So we are going to pass an enum, but because we have this annotation @enumerated, so in the database it will automatically convert it into a string. Okay, so now let me rerun my project. Right, the application is up. So in the database I already have the roles. Okay, it is already in string, so actually I didn't need to change it, but I will show you again as well. Okay, so I'll just simply delete from users limit 3, and now my DB is empty, and I can simply register my users. So how will I register? Again, I'll pass the username, password, and the role. All right, and it will be the same entry. Okay, the curious coder, and the role is admin. Similarly, the curious coder 2, here the role will be staff. Okay, so you can see we are not giving any permissions, we are just adding the role to the user, because to the user we map only role, and then that role is further mapped with the permissions. Okay, this is how we have decoupled this thing. Okay, so now the role is staff, and similarly the role is guest. All right, so in the database we have all the 3 users, curious coder 1, 2, and 3. All right, now what will we do? I can just generate a token for the curious coder first. Okay, so this one is the admin, and we can see that admin has all the permissions. Okay, so ideally we should be able to access all the APIs. I'll just paste the token here, and if I'm trying to access this, I can access this. Good. Then we have this get rooms, and we have rooms.id. Great. Now let me just generate token for the curious coder 2. Okay, so at this point in the API level we are working with users, and that is why we are working with roles, but the authorization is taking place using permissions. Okay, that is the decoupling. Now for the curious coder 2 I have this token, and if I just paste it here, so the token, this one is actually a staff, and staff has view and view all permissions. Okay, so this is the view API, I'm able to access it. This is the view all API. I'm able to access this as well. And this is the add API. This is forbidden. Okay. Similarly, let's do it for the third one as well. The Curious Coder 3. Alright, this time this is the add room API. It can't be accessed. This is the get all rooms API. This also can't be accessed. But if I'll try with some ID, then great. This can be accessed. Okay. So this is how we can actually authorize using the permissions. So at the controller level, we have given the authorization using permissions, and actually you could have used permissions as well as roles parallelly as well. Okay, simultaneously, that also you can do, because in the authorities you have registered both roles as well as permissions. Okay, so this is kind of a different way of achieving the same thing, but I wanted to teach you about both the ways. All right, so this is it about authorization. This is it about roles and permissions. Okay, you should definitely try this implementation on your own, and I hope this video was helpful. So for more such content, please stay tuned and follow my channel, The Curious Coder.